Let me paint a picture for you. It's 2015. You're 13 years old and you just finished watching regular show on Cartoon Network. But the network doesn't just shut off. The Toonami ad plays, and you keep watching because you're intrigued. A certain anime begins to play where there's a bunch of gore and edgy stuff that is just not like the Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh that you have watched before. So you keep watching until you finish the series. That anime was Akame ga Kill, and it changed your anime fandom forever. That's at least my story when it comes to this particular anime, and I'm sure everyone's story is a bit different. Right now you're probably thinking, really? An Akame ga Kill video in the big 2.6? Sometimes when you think about something, you just want to talk about it. And I was also 13 years old 11 years ago, so I wasn't really doing this YouTube stuff. Anyways, Akame ga Kill had a huge impact on my early fandom when it came to anime. Along with Attack on Titan, it was my first exposure to the darker side of the medium, and it made me want to watch more and more series. Given that Toonami was huge in the early to mid 2010s, Akame ga Kill basically exposed many young fans to a different side of anime, and along with Attack on Titan, helped spark a bit of a revolution in the Western community. Akame ga Kill is currently the 31st ranked anime in terms of popularity on my anime list. To me, that just makes sense. The accessibility of the series at the time was something that skyrocketed the popularity, as websites that streamed anime were not as known or as common as they are nowadays. The premise of the story also put a ton of eyes onto the series. The shock factor of not knowing if your favorite character would make it to the next week made it impossible to walk away from, and I will admit I did fall victim to this. The idea of killing off every character was just unheard of, at least to a young Brant, so it grabbed my attention. This attention grabbing impacted the entire idea of no plot armor, and showed that a series where main characters died could be successful in the West. I do think the impact this series had on Battle Shonen cannot be understated though, as it kind of flipped the medium on its head and inspired other series to take a bit of a darker route. So if you haven't seen or read Akame ga Kill, I'm sure you at least know the gist of the series. To break it down, you have Tatsumi, an unassuming guy from the countryside, who is just moving to the big old city to make money to send back to his village. He planned to meet up with his friends, but got conned out of all of his savings as soon as he arrived. He then meets an aristocrat, who invites him to their manor. At their manor, he learns of the corrupted government and of Night Raid, a group of assassins. Fast forward a bit, and at night, the manor is actually attacked by the assassins known as Night Raid, who want to dispose of the aristocrats. Tatsumi decides to protect his newfound aristocratic friends until he opens up the doors to a storehouse. It turns out the aristocrats were taking new arrivals off the street and basically were torturing and getting rid of them. Tatsumi's two childhood friends were victims of this family, so he decides to unalive the aristocrat himself and follow Night Raid back to their lair. This event then begins a story of rebellion and violence known as Akame ga Kill. Night Raid originally had 7 members, but ended the series with just 2, one being Akame, which just makes sense due to the anime being named after her, and the other being Najinda, who was the leader of Night Raid. Each member utilized a powerful weapon known as a Tegu, or Imperial Arm. These weapons are extremely powerful, but they are difficult to wield. The story follows Tatsumi and Night Raid's fight against the corrupt government, with many battles and lots of bloodshed along the way. Akame ga Kill is a series that focuses on the shock factor that comes with constant character deaths and keeping the viewer on edge. The characters don't even have much time for you to get attached, but in my honest opinion, given the amount of time, it does do a decent enough job. You can't help but hope your favorite character will survive to the end, even though you know it won't happen. Let's take Shell for example. She was one of the first characters to warm up to Tatsumi when he joined the group. She then gets a pretty well fleshed out backstory, then boom, she's gone. Within a couple of episodes, she is just removed from the story. This was the first death of the series, and Shell fans from around the world fell to their knees. But that wouldn't be the first one. Bulat was given some screen time, and people thought he was an interesting character. Dead. Chelsea becomes a ton of people's favorite due to her personality and her interesting ability. Dead. Lubbock is finally given the attention he deserves and takes out some very powerful enemies. Dead. Mine has one of the most heartwarming romantic confession scenes that still sits with me to this day, and I do blame that for my love of romance anime. Dead. Tatsumi, the protagonist of the series who successfully overthrew the government, saving his remaining friends in the process. Dead. At the time, I thought this was absolutely revolutionary. No one lives? What a novel concept. But looking back on it now, I just truly think that it was a neat way to keep people engaged. These characters were overall very one-dimensional with extremely cliché designs. That's not a problem in the case for this series though, in my opinion, because the characters aren't the focal point of the series. Rather, the situations the characters are thrust into pick up the slack. Attempting to go back in time 10 years though, I definitely thought these characters were the deepest people ever, with a ton of nuance and creativity. This series holds a special place in my heart, as I'm sure it does for a lot of people. The series was just edgy and fun, and it knew it was edgy. It was also just a simple series, with the good guys and bad guys being explicitly stated with absolutely no nuance. It gave you a side to cheer for and then tore that side down while also taking down the bad side. It's a series that could be considered deep if you look into it hard enough, but in my opinion, it's unapologetic in the idea that it's a battle shonen that takes the opportunity to show off creative abilities through the Imperial arms. Though these battles may be pretty cool, the series does begin to telegraph what it will do after the initial death of Shell. After her death, it becomes clear that the series will focus on a character, attempt to get you invested in them, and then kill them off. That certainly is one way to do things, mainly because it works. But looking back on it now, it's just a bit shallow and predictable, relying on the shock factor rather than actual deep storytelling to keep you engaged. I have not read the manga, but I have heard the ending is completely different, and was received better than the ending of the anime, so I'll have to give it a try. If I were to rate this anime just based on my overall enjoyment, I would probably give it a high rating, like an 8, but based on the storytelling and characters, it would probably be lower at like a 5. I do understand the hate the series gets now, but at one time, I remember this series was the pinnacle of dark fantasy. I haven't watched Akame ga Kill since it originally was released in the West back in 2015, so my opinions are, in fact, a bit outdated. But I wanted to talk about this series due to the impact it had on my early fandom. It's one of those series that I look back on with fond memories, though I know it was really just a super edgy series that tried new things at the time. But that's why anime is such a great medium. The memories series provide and the impact they have on your fandom is something you can always look back on in a positive light. I hope you enjoyed my ramble about Akame ga Kill. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more anime content, and I'll see you next time.